It's really quite dramatic how much the beta has changed in just 2 short weeks. We went from basically not having anything to do to having so much stuff that we pretty much can't do it all. So we started Mythic Plus testing, and I'm going to continue to do Mythic Plus testing. I want to do a dedicated day for each tank and just keep cycling through that until we've either seen everything we're going to see or it gets boring or something changes. So before I say anything, in the description or probably in the pinned comment actually will be a straw poll where you can vote on what we do next. We did Blood, DK, and Brewmaster, and next the other 4 tanks have to come. So just whoever wins the top vote getter is number 1. Then the second vote getter will be number 2, and we'll just go in that order, and then we'll just keep cycling in some different order. Maybe we'll revote at that point once we go through all 6. But we did a lot of DK Mythic Plus this week, and then we also did some Brewmaster this week as well. And I would say that right now, I'm comfortable saying this. I think one of those 2 tanks is going to be the top, and then the other one's going to be the second in terms of Mythic Plus. And it's just because the way they react, the way they deal with damage income, the way they deal damage as well, which is surprising. Both of these tanks are looking extremely powerful for offense too. This is kind of not necessarily, I don't expect this to stay this way, but you never know. So, Brewmaster is this really, really physically wallish tank, and they can deal with physical damage so freaking well that it's almost absurd. It feels almost hard to die against physical, but the problem is they have really weak magic mitigation, like exceedingly weak, to the point where I was getting destroyed by any type of magic, and also I was kind of getting destroyed by situations like very frequent hits of damage. If I couldn't keep the shield up a lot, I did feel like I was relatively weak, but that shield is just so overpowered, it's ridiculous. So I think that's what they want for Brewmaster, so I wouldn't expect that to change. But, the way they're dealing damage right now is kind of top heavy. Keg Smash is absurdly high damage, but it's actually like, even though it's like 40% of my damage, the rest of the kit kind of sucks. But then they have that order ability, whatever the one from I was testing from Venthyr, that just does like 50% of your damage when it's up to. So I'm just kind of really surprised at how much burst damage they're doing. We haven't tested the other tanks, but I feel like between that and Blood DK, which has this really, really overpowered legendary and a couple synergies, I feel like they're going to be really high damage. So maybe all 6 tanks will be like that, but one way or the other, I do feel like one of those 2 tanks is going to be the go-to for Shadowlands Mythic Plus, at least out of the gate. And a lot of that power comes from the combinations of things that are now present, which people are calling systems, kind of, not necessarily liking the situation, but for me, I love this kind of stuff because I love to be able to mix and match things and empower my character in a very almost complicated way, in a way that, there's a lot of options and a lot of permutations there. So today what we're going to go over, we're going to talk about legendaries. We're also going to talk about the fact that there's off-spec legendaries, which might have some interest. I did not actually, I don't know why, I'm just an idiot, but I did not realize that was actually going to be a thing until this couple, like a week and a half ago. There's actually some really good off-spec legendaries. And if you remember in Legion, one of the best off-spec legendaries in the game for any tank was Lady and the Child for Bear. And even for Resto, it was pretty good too. So, but yeah, we'll talk a little bit about that. We'll take a look at that. And then we're going to talk about how that might shift in with conduits, because conduits are in. They're not really finished yet, but I did want to get my thoughts on that. So if you haven't seen, Blood DK is really, really, really being carried right now by this legendary. I already covered a lot of the legendary stuff, so I'm not going to do it again. But I do want to talk about where some of these might synergize well. So Frost Fever, Blood Plague, and Virulent Plague. Super Strain, it's called, the legendary, and it's freaking insane. This is from raid testing, so I'm actually second on damage on this. This is a really high volume boss fight. It's a Kael'thas encounter, so it's not surprising that it's doing this much damage. But as you see, this is doing like something like 50% of my damage here, so it's pretty ridiculous. And I would definitely expect this to get nerfed, but I'm not really sure how they nerf it, because those are just 2 spells for other DK specs, and I think they're trying to keep like class stuff as class stuff. Like if you get Frost Fever as a Blood DK, you get the Frost Fever that Frost DK has. So I don't know, maybe not, maybe I misunderstood it, but I wouldn't be surprised if it got nerfed, but I also wouldn't be surprised if it didn't get nerfed. And if it doesn't, they're going to be extremely powerful offensively. And then apparently the Frost Fever thing, this doesn't say it when you have it on your character, but has a chance to grant the Death Knight 5 runic power each time to deal damage. I brought this up in the last video saying that didn't happen. But people were saying that it did in the video. So that one's really carrying me right now. Obviously, the Vampiric Aura one, which we talked about in the past, is absurd as well. We did use it in the raid testing, and my god, is it really powerful, especially in 10-man raid testing. It felt like such a heavy hitter. But then, you know, this pheromones one, always one to think about. So we talked about this a lot, but it's not just these that we have to talk about. There are also some options. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to switch to frost. Okay, we're just going to take a look at every one of them, just because this isn't something I've covered before, and also because I think this is a really healthy kind of mental exercise. So you as a player can look at the possibility that you might be using other spec legendaries at some point throughout the expansion. And you should start thinking about ways that these things might interact, because I feel like that's kind of the way you break the meta, is you find things that most people wouldn't think about, and you find ways to make them work in ways that aren't conventional, or that might be like niche, you know what I mean? Like stacking something that might create some crazy overpoweredness. So this is for obliterate, so, you know, seemingly no effect. This is for remorseless winter, so seemingly no effect. Frostworm's Fury, seemingly no effect. This is a really good one for Frosto if you haven't seen it. And this one is not in yet. So there you go. So we're just looking at it. You're able to see it immediately. Frost DK, no real benefits. So there's not really going to be, unless that final one is powerful, there's not actually one for Frost DK that Blood DK can use. But then we have some interesting ones for Blood on this Unholy one. A Reanimated Shambler, a super zombie. We use this a good amount actually this week. It does a good amount of damage, but it's just nowhere near as good as the Super Strain one. And mostly because that one also can give you a slight defensive benefit too, but also because it spreads its damage easily. Whereas this thing will only do damage to 8 nearby enemies, right? So like, yeah, that's a pretty big restriction. Dark Transformation, no impact. Deathstrike and Death Coil deal 10% increased damage and reduce the remaining cooldown of Death and Decay. Now that is a very good one, and I could see this one being very good. And one of the reasons that we are even making this video in general is because of all these kind of synergies that we're getting with Death and Decay for Blood DK. So we'll talk about that in a second. But then the final one is reduce the runic power cost of Death Coil by 10, and Death Coil increase it so the second half is useless for us. But I mean, why would anybody take that one? I don't know. Maybe there's going to be some range DPS component to Blood DK in the future, and this one's valuable. But it's just thinking about these things that is really something that you want to do, and something you start getting your mind around. You know, so this one might be very, very good. And I think it's for a very specific reason. So basically, before I talk about it more directly, well, we got to switch back to Blood. But yeah, I've been using the Night Fate Covenant, and it's basically like it's turned D&D into like a really powerful and like almost like a core spell. It always has been. It's stupid to say that, but it's turned it into something very interesting. And of course, with the buffs to rapid decomposition, which makes Death and Decay deal 15% more, or damage 15% more often, and the situation with Blood Plague, it does feel like with the Super Strain Legendary and buffing D&D as much as you can, all of a sudden these are like two of the best spells that any tank has. So these are the kind of things that you have to think about, because it's like, what might come out for other tanks that might turn the page for these tanks? Like obviously there's powerful interactions, and you know that legendary, I don't remember where it is, but somewhere here I have it. But yeah, it's like when you put that thing on, it might make the spell even more powerful. So this is a really interesting thought process, and I think that tanks are, especially with all these systems, are the ones that are the most beneficial. Like they gain the most from them. But so another thing we want to talk about is conduits, and how they what role they play in it, because obviously it's extremely potent, these conduits. Some of them, especially for some tanks, I think Blood DK right now has the most complete set as well. They can be spec defining, absolutely. So all these people who are talking about Covenant abilities and, you know, the imbalances that might occur, some of these are way more powerful than anything like that that I've seen, at least. So but yeah, so there's like a finesse, there's an endurance. This is the endurance, this is the finesse. I've separated them in my bags, and this is the potency conduits. So these are meant to be like offensive conduits. Right now there's only 2, and then these are meant to be the tank conduits. Right now there's 5, and then these are meant to be like kind of utility conduits, and these are 4. So right now the Soulbinds work in a way that there's 4 options. Usually I don't think there's any more than 4, and it's usually like 2 guaranteed and then 2 that you choose, maybe like 1 guaranteed and 3 that you choose. But the path that you pick, it depends a lot on what you want out of the talent tree thing. So so let's look at every one. So this one currently does not work. Anti-magic zones radius is increased by 1,000%. Now, obviously, that's not going live with that number, but the duration is only increased by 1%. The funny thing about this is it actually changes. You can't see because of the webcam, but it actually changes it from 10 seconds to 11 seconds on the tooltip, so that's useful. Here's another one. Death Strike's minimum healing is increased by 1%. So, you know, it's not bad. It doesn't really I don't feel like it synergizes with too much, but it does help those bracers, the legendary bracers, right? So these are the things that we're trying to think about. Like, where do these things, where can they synergize to a level and play above what you might expect them to play at, right? So that's what we're thinking about. When Lichborn is active, the damage you take is reduced by 5%. So that's probably a really good all-around one, because Lichborn is a very powerful tool right now. It gives 10% leech, and of course makes you immune to a bunch of things. So if it also reduces the damage you take by 5%, then this turns into a 2-minute CD that's quite powerful, right? So, but is it more powerful than other things? Right now, there's not anything buffing Lichborn that I'm aware of. I didn't see anything anywhere. No talents, no legendaries, nothing like that. So you never know. Maybe in the future there'll be more. This one is actually really interesting as well. Increases the duration of dancing rune weapon, but it says 0. I believe it was 3 seconds, if I remember correctly. Yeah, it goes from 8 seconds to 11 seconds. I remember that now. So it makes it go up by 3 seconds. And while active, your parries increase your maximum health by 1%, stacking up to 2 times. So, I mean, I'm not, we still don't know if they're going to like stack or if there's going to be more powerful versions of these. I guess there is, because there's item level, but, you know, it depends on how high you can get both of these values. If you can get rune weapon to extend by like 10 seconds at some point in the future, then this one looks great. But the actual parries that you get out of an 11-second CD, it doesn't really, and only obviously it only stacks up to 2 times. So I don't know. This one doesn't feel very good. It seems like a kind of decent all-around one, but I feel like there's better, especially considering this one here is just a 5% flat damage reduction. The extra health is not anything valuable to me. But then this one is the one that everybody's been talking about, and like there was that data mining about potentially stacking them with the item level or whatever, calling them ranks or whatever. So this is right now 5% of your maximum health. Rune tap heals you and your party for 5% of your maximum health. And again, it's presumed that it's only going to work for you and the 4 people in your physical party, even if you're in a raid group. That is a freaking lot of health that's going to add up, especially since we have such high HP. Rune tap is, of course, one of your major defensive CDs, though. So it's not something that you want to use willy-nilly, but you can get a lot of benefit out of this. And we were talking about this in the raid testing, but I think right now there could be a lot of benefit to being like a support off tank as a Blood DK right now. Because you could put up, they buffed Mark of Blood, and it's actually pretty cool. It's a really cool thing. We used it in the raid testing a bunch. It didn't do a ton of healing, but I didn't really try to keep it up. It's a big DPS loss to do these things, to be spending runes on healing other people. But, you know, if you put Mark of Blood up, you're going to potentially be doing a lot of healing to the tank who's actually tanking. And, of course, if you keep you keep this up here, and especially if it gets higher than 5% in the future, and you keep spamming rune tap every CD, you might be doing a lot of HPS to others in this situation here. So kind of brings it back to Legion, where they had that leech potential to help the group in that way, especially that plus the Vamp Blood legendary. So like those kind of things seem really powerful. You can take a talent, you could take a relic or whatever it's called, a conduit, and you could take a legendary and potentially turn yourself into a dramatic group utility. You know what I mean? So that's pretty cool. Then here's the finesse ones. Nothing that special here. Death's Advance getting a little bit of buff. It's kind of just like the Azrael power. Not something I think most people would want, but again, it's only finesse, you know, it's competing with only these. It's not competing with these or these. It's only competing with these. You're always going to have one of each at least. I think some will probably, I don't think there's ever going to be a time when you could have 3 of one, but maybe. I haven't looked at it very in depth yet. Death Grips slows enemy movement speed by 25% for until canceled. Obviously not finished, but that's not very good at all. 25%. That's not very good at all. So I wouldn't like that one. But again, this one can pair very well with the legendary that makes where is it? Yeah, every time for 3 seconds after casting Death Grip, you may cast the spell a second time without regard for its cooldown. So like that could have some synergy. You know what I'm saying? That's the important thing to think about. This one is actually probably the best option though. Successfully interrupting an enemy with Mind Freeze grants 5 runic power. So interrupting is something that you should be doing constantly as a tank anyway. It's commonly looked at as like the tank's one of the main tank roles. You know what I mean? Is kind of controlling packs and CCing and stuff like that with interrupts. So this is a really good one, and especially if this we've come out to realize that there is going to be this rank system that they're talking about. I mean, if that gives up to like 25 runic power in the future or something crazy like that, I mean, that might be really nuts, actually. So that's pretty valuable. The problem is, you know, I don't know how it works if I assume you actually have to be the one to register the interrupt. I can't imagine you can just press the spell and get 5 runic power, because that would be ridiculous. But then that means that a bunch of people are now competing for interrupts. So we all know how that goes. If you remember all the way back to Cataclysm, there was a buffs when you used interrupt, and there'd be like 2 classes who both wanted it, and they would just both interrupt at the same time and then argue about it. So it's a cool concept in paper, but who knows how it will work. And then this one is cool. I mean, its cooldown of Icebound is reduced by 15 seconds. So, I mean, who knows how valuable that becomes. I haven't really, you know, haven't really thought about it, but 15 seconds on a 3-minute CD, nothing special. I guess it depends on what it looks like. So right now I'd probably take the Spirit Drain one, but again, if you have 2 finesse ones, you have to choose 2. You cannot stack them on top of themselves. Like, you can't have more than one of these right now anyway. So we'll see how that looks. But then there's only 2 DPS ones, and that's probably a good thing because these are really, really, really good. Hard Strike deals 10% increased damage to enemies affected by Blood Plague. Infected. That's not what I expected to see there. Infected by Blood Plague, which is every enemy that you're in combat with. And then Blood Boil increases the damage enemies take from your Blood Plague by 1% for 6 seconds, stacking up to 3 times. So these two already have a little bit of synergy together. Obviously, you're going to have Blood Plague on anything anyway, so you can kind of say that that's not true, but this one is the one that really, I feel like, is defining the spec in many ways. Blood Boil, increasing the damage enemies take from your Blood Plague by 1% for 6 seconds. So we could already tell that that's going to help. That's going to feel really good with this kind of disease concept with this legendary. Obviously, it doesn't seem to be buffing Frost Fever and Virulent Plague. I don't expect it to in the future either, but maybe in the future, for some reason, it will. Either way, right now you feel like kind of like a disease spec. Putting up diseases on as many targets feels like really valuable. And then, of course, another big synergy here is rapid decomposition, right? So Blood Plague, Death and Decay deal damage 15% more often. So that's already really good for something like this, considering it's going to make Blood Plague do more damage over time. And then, of course, it leeches 15% more health. So, you know, it's like these things, they kind of work well together. And that's what we're after here. So I feel like this is a really potent setup right now for Blood DK, for example. Having this legendary on, having this talent on, having Nightfade Covenant, which also gets buffed by the talent. Potentially, you could even use other legendaries like this legendary to make D&D more. The Unholy Death Knight legendary, like we talked about. And then having this conduit in. So that's an example of kind of what we're talking about here. So let me know what, I'm very interested in hearing what you guys think about this, but let's keep going. We're going to do every class. Now, it's easy to say that Warrior has some really powerful legendaries, and I think a lot of people are hoping that this kind of stuff corrects the problems that Warriors look like they might have, especially coming off of Battle for Azeroth, where they dominated so in small group content. It does look like that their days are numbered in that way, but I do think that, you know, we looked at the legendaries in a previous video. I do think that they have some really good ones, especially they basically have like a similar slew like Blood DK might have, but I'm not particularly sure what will be overpowered and what won't yet, but I can already tell that one like this here that's useful for all 3 specs can have some really high synergies. So these are the kind of things you want to look at. So first we're going to take a look at Fury though, just to be sure. Bloodthirst increases your haste, can't use that. Rampage has a 25% chance to apply Siege Breaker effect to your target. So again, can't use that. Rampage again, can't use that. I don't think there's any value there. And when Recklessness expires, your critical strike is increased. So, you know, maybe someday in the future, there's some value there. But right now, you can only use 1 legendary. So nothing for Fury. And let's just take a quick look at Arms. And we'll see if there's anything for Arms to synergize with that might make it an interesting legendary pick. Mortal Strike, can't use that. Your Slam, don't have access to that as Prot, do we? I know that Slam, you have access to that in a couple of different ways, but I'm pretty sure Prot has no access to it. Execute causes a target to take 25% more damage from your next Mortal Strike, stacking up to 2 times. Well, we're getting closer. They have Execute, and it can be heavily modified into the Condemn ability for Venthyr, but no value there because we cannot use Mortal Strike. And while Bladestorm is active, you automatically cast a total of 2 Mortal Strikes at 2 random nearby enemies. So Bladestorm, I don't believe Prot has access to that, but maybe it used to be a talent. I remember back in WoD challenge modes, Bladestorm was talent. I don't think it is a talent anymore. I think it's now a spell, right? Yeah. Anyway, so no access to that. Okay, so nothing for the off specs, right? But that doesn't mean that there's nothing to look at. So let's take a look at conduits. Now here's this is where things start to get really cool. The cooldown of shield wall is reduced by 20 seconds. Now that sounds like a hell of a synergy with your shield wall ability now grants 50% of its effect to all party members. So if you think the Vamp Blood one is strong, you might think, for Blood DK that is, you might think, well, it's strong because of Red Thirst. It's strong because of how short the CD is on Vamp Blood already. But when you start to think about the potential here, 20 seconds on a 4-minute CD, especially if that keeps going up in the future, then this synergy might be quite high, right? So these are the things that you're looking for. Impending Victory heals you for 400% of the damage it dealt over 8 seconds. Now that really changes the kit of Prot Warrior, doesn't it? Being able to actually get some serious self-healing from an already powerful talent. If you haven't seen, this talent has been buffed to a really powerful version of itself, honestly. I really like this one. This one makes me really want to play Warrior. So this is a synergy that I'm really excited for. And I don't think there's no actual synergy with legendaries, but yeah, that's a really cool concept. Last Stand increases your rage generation by 30%. So another really good one. If you look at a lot of the reasons why Prot Warrior was powerful in BFA was because how much access to things like Thunderclap and just all their spells in general they had, right? And that was a lot of talents that don't work that way anymore, but they're kind of slowly inching back towards that with stuff like that. 6% of the damage you deal adds to your active ignore pain. Now this one is kind of if this was in BFA as an Azerite ability, it'd probably be one of the strongest Azerite abilities in the game. But unfortunately, we'll see. We'll see how much damage they do, first of all. If they do as much damage as they did in BFA, then this is going to be ridiculously overpowered. But I don't think this is the best defensive one on the whole slew. And Revenge has a 4% chance to refund a charge of shield block. Now, let me know what you guys who play Warrior think about that one. That sounds really crazy to me. I don't really know how powerful that might end up being, but just on paper, 4% chance to get extra shield blocks. I mean, that seems really good to me, but maybe you probably can't get 3 charges. I don't know how valuable that would be, even if you could, because obviously you probably want to have charges going all the time. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. Not a main Warrior, but we still want to cover this stuff and get the discussion rolling. Now, I think the finesse ones are the ones that maybe have the most power here. And this is really, really good. Rallying Cry's duration and health granted are increased by 20%. Now, if they ever allow stacking, or they ever allow this to go higher, like more than 20%, this could be really crazy. I mean, we're talking about Warrior all of a sudden looking like one of the best tanks for raids. They could bring all kinds of buffs. All this as well. It's like, I mean, this is pretty nuts, right? Duration as well. I mean, that's pretty big. That could be really, really, really good. Intimidating Shout can withstand 80% more damage before breaking. That sounds good on paper. 80%, it's a high number, but who knows? It depends on the actual values that you're dealing to the mobs, whether or not that's good or not. And then here's another one. Intervene reduces damage taken by the target by 10%. So another great one. Obviously, Intervene now is just a flat out ability. It used to be like I think it's called Safeguard or something like that. It was like a talent. So now it's just something that you can use no matter what. Reduces intercepting all melee and ranged attacks against them by 6 seconds while they remain within 10 yards. And now it also causes them to take 10% less damage. So it's really good for your tank synergies, and this is seemingly really good for your raid synergies. So I'm really excited about this because this synergizes really well with legendaries. These ones are these are way better than the Blood DK ones, right? Like immediately comparing the two, way better finesse conduits than the Blood DK ones. Now for the potency, they only have the 2 here. Condemn increases the critical strike chance of Condemn by 3% for 8 seconds, stacking up to 6 times. So this is something that, actually maybe it's not, maybe it's probably for Execute, but because I have Condemn, it changes it to Condemn. But I assume this works for Execute too, but I can't confirm because I only have this Covenant unlocked, unfortunately. But yeah, so that could be really good offensively. A lot of people were talking about Warriors, the lack of offensive kind of access that they don't have, that they had in BFA that they won't have in Shadowlands. But then a lot of people counter it by saying oh, they have Execute, they have Whirlwind, they have all these things again. It's like, okay, yeah, so maybe this becomes really good. And of course it's competing with only a single other option. Now the weird thing about this is This one is purely for Condemn. So there's a little bit of an impurity here in this testing. The Blood DK is using the Night Fate Covenant, which does not have an active, whatever you call it, ability, right? So I don't know if that's something to note, because I haven't tested it, unfortunately. It's just a caveat here. This is imperfect, this comparison. But all the other ones that I have are Venthyr, because that's what they were before they unlocked all the Covenants. So all the other classes, including Blood DK, by the way, Blood DK can go there and pick up one that makes their Venthyr ability do more damage and reduce the, makes it dodge more or something like that. So like it's there, but there was nothing for Night Fae. So it's like, is that something to consider? I don't know yet. It might be unfinished. It might not be. I don't know. But either way, this is something that you're going to see as well, which you didn't see in the Bloody Case section. Whenever you seemingly have a Covenant that has a real ability, it's going to do something specific here. So Condemns damage dealt and prevented are increased by 8% for each nearby enemy up to 40%. So I assume that what they're trying to do there is they're trying to make one that seems really, really attractive for each Covenant. But this one, I mean, these almost seem like a little bit too attractive, depending on what they modify the other ones with. So there's another variable here that we won't be able to cover in today's video. But these are just kind of thought-provoking topics. So since there's the only two, you could almost assuredly say that there's going to be more to come, I assume, one way or the other. But I think the main power here is the fact that there is some very powerful synergy. Some of the legendaries might help, or you know, they might help with these, but in general, these are just really good on their own. So that's Warrior. So last time we covered Monk, there was no legendaries at all, I believe. So we'll go through all of them again today, and we'll talk a little bit about it because we did just test Monk today. But so this one's just not done yet for whatever reason. Invoker's Delight gave 12% haste for all whatever the hell that says, until canceled after summoning your Celestial. So the Celestial, all three specs have a Celestial now. You got the Tiger as Windwalker. You got the little dragon thing, or the bird as Mistweaver. And of course you got Invoke Nizao, which is actually pretty good. Nice little CD there for Monk. I like seeing that. But I don't think 12% haste is going to be very valuable compared to some of these other ones. This is another one that's just like, okay, that might be one of the weirdest ones. Rollout, it's called. Roll has one additional charge. I'm all set. Thanks a lot. Why you would use a legendary for that. But then this one is actually really interesting because if you've ever seen some of the dungeon stuff that we've done with Touch of Death, it can actually be quite potent. Now, of course, you know, the harder the difficulty, the less value you're going to get from it. But a whole minute off Touch of Death seems pretty good. So that could be really valuable. But unfortunately, there's just a slam dunk winner here for Monk. And they actually have a lot of other options too. So let's take a look at the Brewmaster specific ones, because I feel like all four of them are actually really interesting. Flaming Kicks. Your Breath of Fire ignites your right leg in flame for 8 seconds, causing your Blackout Kick and Spinning Crane Kick to deal 30% additional damage as fire damage, and refresh the duration of your Breath of Flame on the target. So I don't know a ton about Brewmaster, but it got brought up today on stream saying this will help have higher uptime on Breath of Flame, and somebody countered saying you should not have any problems having high uptime on Breath of, or whatever that's the name of it, right? Breath of Fire. So they said you should not have problems with this, so this is not helpful. The only thing that it would do is more damage, and I don't think it's going to do more damage than this one, which we'll skip for now. Anyway, Mighty Pour. Celestial Brew increases your armor by 15% for 7 seconds. And Purifying Brew has a chance to not consume a charge. Now, I didn't try this one today, but this is extreme. This is the only one that actually has some big impact on defense from what I could tell. So it does seem like this could be really good for raids, like something like a pure physical damage raid boss, which exists plenty of times. That's really good. I mean, 15% more armor. I assume it's like 15% of what you have, which always isn't a lot for Brewmaster. But 7 seconds, that's actually longer. How long does this actually last for? Yeah, it's the same, basically the same duration as the spell. So while the shield is up, or I guess preferably even longer, then the shield might be up if you consume the shield quick. And then 15% not to consume a charge. And we definitely didn't use Purifying Brew well today, so this might be one to try. Tiger Palm has a 10% chance to deal 300% of the normal damage and reduce the remaining cooldown of your brews by an additional 1 second. Now that's Facepalm. That's a pretty famous little thing there from Legion. But I mean, that sounds great and all. I mean, I don't know how good the damage would be. I'd have to see it. but I just don't think it's going to beat this. I mean, this is really ridiculous. Keg Smash deals 30% additional damage and has one additional charge. One additional charge on Keg Smash. That is a very, very, very important spell. Having 2 charges, pretty ridiculous. I think that was also part of Legion. But unfortunately, you see what happens here. This is overall damage from the dungeon that we did this afternoon. And so Keg Smash just becomes your top damage by a mile. I mean, it did freaking 10% more than melee. Even, almost 13% more than Touch of Death. So yeah, it just really becomes your top damage by a mile. And I'm probably not even using it as often as I possibly could because I have a lot of trouble consuming the energy. Not consuming the energy, I guess, because of Tiger Palm. So that one's interesting. I feel like this one's just mandatory because, Keg Smash, of course, reduces the bruise by 4 seconds. So, yeah, that's pretty potent when you have a spell like Celestial Brew, which is as good as it is. But there's even more. So let's take a look at them. There's a lot of really cool ones for Monk, honestly. I think they have one of the better slews. So we'll take a look at Mistweaver now. Tiger Palm, Blackout Kick, and Rising Sun Kick heal for 50% of the damage done to an injured ally within 20 yards. Now, we tried that today, and it was pitiful. But somebody said that it's bugged and it's not doing 50% for some reason. Oh yeah, ATOM. That's what they actually said. Ancient Teachings of the Monastery was bugged, and it was not working properly. So we might get another try in the future. I like the concept. Listen, I'm looking for stuff like this. Even if they're not the most powerful, I'm looking for stuff like this that could turn tanks, especially off tanks and raids, into like a utility pick when you don't need 2 tanks. There's a lot of fights in Nyalotha where I feel like I don't do a lot. So that could be really, really, really good under the right circumstances. But the rest of them, I don't think they have any value at all. None at all. These things are not anything that Brewmaster has access to. But that one's pretty interesting. I'd be interested in seeing it once. If it is bugged, I'd be interested in seeing it when it's not bugged. It did very little healing. If it was actually bugged, though, maybe that was why. And then another one. Not this one, though. This one we don't have access to. This is it here. Tiger Palm now has a 10-yard range and increases your critical strike chance for 25% for 6 seconds on the target. That cannot be used more than once every 30 seconds. So that means you can't keep applying it to multiple targets, most notably. Oh, no, it says once every 30 seconds per target. Interesting. That was not my results when I tested it, but maybe that's how it worked, and I just misunderstood what I was looking at. But anyway, the big thing is when used, you instantly dash to the target. So, I mean, it's kind of cool. I never really liked these 10-yard dashes. There's been abilities like this in the past. I don't really find like they're very useful. So I'm not too keen on that one, but it's interesting to see how much damage that actually does. The rest of these don't exist. I thought this one would have been cool, but I forgot Brewmaster doesn't actually have Chi Spenders anymore. Last time I played Brewmaster seriously was WoD, so I forgot that that's not actually the case. I thought this one would have been cool, but it's not. So really, there's one for Mistweaver that might be interesting, and there's one that might have some usage for Windwalker, but otherwise, it's just the ones we talked about. And I think, unfortunately, Keg Smash is just, that double Keg Smash one is just ridiculously good. But there's some more stuff to talk about, so let's take a look at it. So we got Conduits here. Again, a bunch of 5 endurance, 4 finesse, and 3 potency. Of course, one of these potencies, again, is this one that, here, we'll get to that. So fortifying ingredients, fortifying brew grants you a shield equal to 5% of your health for 15 seconds. Now, that might be good. I don't know. I mean, fortifying brew is such a long CD. I never know how to gauge its length of the CD because it's so long, but it gets reduced and all that. So, I don't know, 5% of your health doesn't seem very good. When casting Vivifying Yourself, its heal is increased by 10% and has a chance to refund its cost. Now, that one might be good for Mistweaver. It's in the Brewmaster slot, but I don't think that's very good. By the way, you can use conduits from other specs. Just I've yet to see one that does a single thing. Maybe more will come out that will be that way. But right now, like, conduits modify core spells for the most part. This one does not modify a core spell. So I don't know. Maybe there will be some that can be used on multiple specs. But like, for example, the DK ones were all like frost, damage things that you don't actually have, or unholy spells that you don't actually have. So anyway, expel harm's healing is increased by 20%. I think I used that one today, and it did. I guess it did decent. But yeah, expel harm. It's really never going to match what we got going on here at the top of this list, but I guess that's okay. And then this one, really interesting. While under the effects of Celestial Brew, your effects that heal you are increased by 20%. So, like, I mean, you could put both of these in, I guess, and then you would heal for even more. But, I mean, it depends on if... I don't actually know if that means the shield from Celestial Brew. I doubt it. But, yeah, I mean, maybe you guys know more than I do. What does this actually count? Because there's not actually many things that heal you. But does it increase Celestial Fortune? I guess it would increase all this stuff, right? So probably not increasing the actual shield. But then this one, Shuffle grants you stagger 5% additional effectiveness. So that's probably just the best one numerically, right? Because the more stagger you have, the better, obviously. But yeah, I don't know. These ones don't seem very good. I mean, if you compare them to the Blood DK ones, really nothing special here. But maybe that could be a problem for Monk, right? Because we're talking about their kit. But if the stuff that modifies their kit isn't great, then maybe they fall behind a little bit. So you might be seeing that now. Finesse Conduit, this one's a really weird one. When paralysis ends, your target movement speed is reduced by 60% for 5 seconds. I mean, that's a relatively large slow, but why would you want that after paralysis ends? I don't really know. It doesn't seem great. Transcendence transfer increases your movement speed by 10%. Are you kidding me? As a monk, how many movement speed things they got, and this is the best they can give on that one? It's kind of weird. This one, ironically, might be one of the best endurance conduits. Targets affected by your leg sweep deal 5% less damage for 5 seconds. But I'm like 90% sure that 5 seconds, like, I mean, the spell lasts for 3 seconds. So is it only 2 effective seconds that they deal 5% less damage? Because if they're stunned for 3 seconds, then I don't know. That doesn't seem, I don't know. Well, I haven't tested it, so maybe I'm wrong about that, but that doesn't seem very good. 5% less damage is, yeah, not that great for Monk anyway. Then Blackout Kick is a 5% chance to grant a charge or roll. Now that would actually be interesting. I'd like to test that one properly because, you know, if that actually does give you a charge or roll, I don't remember which ones I actually used today. We can see it, can't we? It's in the tree. How do you see it? Yeah, so we used, which finesse did we use? This one? I used it. I have to look back at the video because I didn't notice it at all. Not once, but interesting. And then Walk with the Ox. Abilities that grant Shuffle reduce the cooldown on Invoke Nizao by 0.5 seconds. And Nizao Stomp deals an additional 10% damage. So the damage he does is not great, but I mean, it's a little bit, you know, it's going to add up if you use it well. I just couldn't really find, it felt like just using it as an offensive CD. So didn't really do that much damage. Okay, but then here we go. So like everything else, forget about it. This is the one that you want to talk about. Keg Smash deals an additional 20% damage to targets affected by Breath of Fire. So we're talking about synergy. This is obviously huge synergy here with the legendary that we have on to give Keg Smash additional 30% damage. So basically, Keg Smash, Breath of Fire, Keg Smash, and I mean, this is the results, right? 25% of your damage, single spell. I mean, that's not even that much though. I'm actually really disappointed with the damage that they did overall. Like when you have Fallen Order up and when you have everything going, Brewmaster does an insane amount of burst damage. But I was really surprised that double Keg Smash, like, it's not as much damage as you would think. I'm kind of surprised. So even with this, I don't know. I'm not really sure. But yeah, using this, Fallen Order monks deal 20% more damage and healing. That's going to be the biggest DPS increase for sure. Fallen Order is doing insane damage. I guess it's random which ones come out. If you haven't seen the spell, it could be like a bunch of monks come out of this freaking mirror portal looking thing. So that's a Brewmaster one, I believe. I don't actually know. It's hard to tell. You could tell when you're in combat because the things they do. That one of them was healing me. That must be the Windwalker. The Brewmaster's the one with the staff on his shoulder, and then the healer's like casting the Kamehameha there. So anyway, yeah, I don't know. So here's like something interesting, right? Like Brewmaster's kit from like a baseline point of view is insanely good. I mean, they got Clash back, they got a 3-minute CD, they got a huge offensive CD. The offensive rotation is actually really deep now. In BFA, I can't stand it. It feels like there's almost nothing to do rotationally. It's way more fun with this legendary and what they have in Shadowlands. But the rest of their stuff gets modified so poorly by it that it almost feels like they're taking a step back because of that. Like if you look at Warrior, Blood DK especially, these specs are gaining a lot from these systems. Brewmaster, not really gaining much, other than that legendary, which seems like an absolute slam dunk home run. What other analogies can I use? All of them seems very good. That's about it. That's the only thing that I look at. That plus this one conduit, and obviously huge. This is going to get really strong over the course of time. But it's like, man, right out of the gate, it doesn't really feel like any of these all kind of suck. I feel like that, right? How do you guys feel about them? So that's Monk in a great spot, kind of on paper, but we'll see how these systems modify them over time. So Paladin have a crazy slew of legendaries. I want to talk more about them today because they really do have, I mean, ones that sound like they can be some of the best ones in the whole game. And the flavor is really captured well. So let's go through them all here. Uther's Guard, your Blessing of Freedom, Sacrifice, and Protection cooldowns are reduced by 1 second per 1 holy power spent. So we'll come back to this one, but this is one that I think has the potential to be a very interesting combination with something that's coming up here. Now this one is very interesting. Of Dusk and Dawn. When you reach 5 holy power, you gain Blessing of Dawn. When you reach 0 holy power, you gain Blessing of Dusk. Blessing of Dawn has damage and healing increased by 6 seconds for 10 or 6% for 10 seconds, and damage taken reduced by 6 seconds for 10 seconds. So I'm not in love with the 10 seconds part. I think what they probably should do is they should make it really powerful so you don't spend holy power, but I'm not sure that's what they want out of it. I think they want it to be like, oh, well, if you don't play properly, you get a little buff from not playing properly, but realistically, I don't think anybody's going to take this one, even though it's really freaking cool. Like, it's such a cool idea. That's what I'm saying. They really hammered the flavor here with the legendaries for Paladin. This is really a cool idea, but I just don't think anybody would ever take it. It's just going to be numerically weakened because you're not going to, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but I could be completely wrong. But anyway, the Arbiter's Judgment. Judgment has a 50% chance to reduce the cost of your next Holy Power spender by 1. Another great one. We talked a lot about using Holy Power as a prop Paladin especially. And God, it could have some big power. It could be really interesting. I'm really looking forward to playing prop Pally in the coming weeks here. But yeah, so that's a crazy one. This one is the one that everybody's talking about. And it's a bit confusing because it's on this row that makes it look like all Paladins have it. But regardless, your Avenger's Shield has a 50% chance to have its cooldown instantly reset when used. Now, hopefully you've seen the Paladin changes that we covered a few weeks ago. If you haven't, you're going to have to go back and watch that. But this can have massive implications with the way prop Paladin is working nowadays, and maybe the one that synergizes the best, because of course it has all kinds of, I mean, there's a lot of different potentials here between holy power and just the shield itself. But yeah, I mean, there's, wait, what happened? Yeah, here it is. First Avenger Shield hits 2 additional targets and grants you an Absorb Shield for 100% of all the damage it deals. So that alone, you could already see massive synergy there. And I honestly, I'd be surprised to see that not be a guaranteed pick for most prop pallies and 5-mans. And I wonder how it works with, I don't think it does, but because the Bastion ability throws out a bunch of shields if you haven't seen it. That does not work with First Avenger, unfortunately, but at least it didn't last time I checked it. But I wonder if this somehow has some impact there. Unlikely, but anyway, let's keep going. The Ardent Protector Sanctum reduces damage taken while Ardent Defender is active by an additional 10%. And when you activate Ardent Defender, it will also apply to the nearest ally within 15 yards. A little bit shaky. I mean, I wouldn't say that this is as good as like the Blood DK or the Warrior ones, but you know what Ardent Defender does, right? Ardent Defender, cheat death. The next attack that would otherwise kill you will instead bring you to 20% of your maximum health. Now, I'm not going to go and say anything crazy here, but if you're able to give another player a cheat death, well, that could be pretty good, right? I'm telling you, these are really interesting. These are like way more interesting than I think people would normally. Like, some of the legendaries are like, oh, that's just mathematically poor, or this one's whatever, and nobody's going to use it. This is like, wait a second. You know what I mean? So anyway, Bulwark of Righteous Fury. Each target hit by Avenger's Shield increases the damage of your next Shield of the Righteous. So another great one for the Avenger's Shield synergies that we've been talking about here. Really interesting concept. Reign of Endless Kings. When you drop below 20% health, you become infused with the Guardian of Ancient Kings for 4 seconds. This cannot again occur for 45 seconds. It's okay. Kind of probably a little weak, I feel like. Maybe it's not as unique. It's not as dynamic. Casting Avenging Wrath or any Forbearance ability grants 5 holy power. So now that is an insanely good one too. So as you see, there's a lot of really powerful ones that, you know, could be absolutely transformative. But let's keep taking a look here. We still got other specs to check out. We got Holy Paladin. I want to, of course, see the situation going on there with that shield thing. Let's say, I think they probably just got it on the wrong row. Yeah, I guess they just got it on the wrong row. This is probably the one that's supposed to be up there, and then the Holy Power one is down there. So these are all the same. Holy Shock protects a target. We won't have access to that as a tank. Yeah, that won't be there. Light of Dawn, won't have access to that. And Fusion of Light, won't have access to that. So unfortunately, none that Holy Paladin could contribute to Prop Pally. Let's see Rhett, though, real quick. And Rhett has... Spending Holy Power grants you 20 haste. 20 haste only? Per Holy Power spent for 12 seconds, stacking up to 20 times. So that's interesting. That's a cool one. Depending on how good... yeah, I mean, as long as it keeps refreshing, that could be up 100% of the time, especially with how Prop Pally works nowadays. Hammer of Wrath extends Avenging Wrath by 2 seconds and deals 20% additional damage. That could be really good for offense. We'll have to check that out at some point. Templar replaces Templar's Verdict with Final Verdict, a devastating strike that deals 2,090 damage. Oh, that's really good. What the hell? Okay, cool. Didn't know that existed. Sounds cool. And then here's the other one for Rhett. Projects Divine Storm forward 20 yards. Oh, that's neat. Wow, that's really... Rep Pallies are probably gonna freaking love that one. But yeah, anyway. So yeah, these two are kind of interesting. We might have to try them out as prop. But either way, they already have some of the coolest ones. Now, unfortunately, their conduit system is not really complete yet. So if there's a bunch of updates in the future, we'll come back to this. But I think we could take a look at what we have. Consecrate heals you for 50% of Consecration's damage every second while standing in it. All right, thanks for stopping by, guys. That's the end of the video. That's the best one, right? I mean, come on. That's pretty ridiculous. In 5-mans especially, Consecrate does a lot of damage. And this is... So, but one thing that is weird about all these, they're labeled as applicable for all 3 specs. So maybe, like, I was wrong before when I said, like, there's ones that are class... I don't know. Maybe there's some that are all for all. I assume there is. Because for Blood DK, it didn't feel like that was the case. But maybe that is true. But anyway, Word of Glory applies Absorb Shield that lasts 15 seconds for 15% of the healing on the Paladin when used. So presumably that means, like, no matter who it heals, it still puts a shield on me, I guess. That seems interesting, especially with how we're going to be using Word of Glory. So already 2 really good ones. And the Divine Shield cooldown is reduced by 5 seconds when you take damage. This effect can only trigger once every 30 seconds. So some genius mathematician out there in the comments, check out the math on this. Tell me what it will effectively reduce the cooldown to, because obviously every 30 seconds it will reduce the cooldown of Divine Shield by 5 seconds, provided it's on CD. So, you know, as long as you're using it 100% of the time every 5 minutes, what would it take the cooldown to? Doesn't take a genius to do it, but I'm no mathematician, unfortunately. Anyway, Wrench Evil. Turn Evil's cast time, and those are finesse ones, is reduced by 50%, and its range is increased by 50 yards. That's a lot. I mean, first of all, the range on it is only 20 yards. So that's pretty interesting. And the cast time being reduced by 50% makes it a 7-second cast. So, I mean, that's kind of a long cast. Wait, what? Oh, no, of course, that's the cooldown. I'm going to do it. 7-second cast. Anyway, it's a 1.4-second cast. So I guess 1.5 before haste. So that takes it down to a 1 minute, or about under a minute. So anyway, interesting concept. I'm not saying the right words. I'm going to move on. But yeah, it's cool. I don't think anybody's going to use it, though, is my point, right? Even no matter how cool and flavorful it is, what are we talking about? Turn Evil for? Who uses that? Nobody. Now, here we go. This is one people will use. Divine Steed's duration is increased by 50%. This is the kind of thing they need to do more of, for sure, to pick up a little bit of value for tanks that are like Paladin and Blood DK, that they could use a little help in the speed department. This is really good. I mean, this is a good one. Now, the thing about Divine Steed is it's already it lasts quite long. It's 3 seconds now, so another 50%. So what's that? 4.5 seconds, I guess. So I mean that's a relatively long time to be moving at 100% speed. So it's one of those things though. Like, do you need to sprint for 100? Like that full duration of that? You know what I mean? I think a lot of times the abilities like roll or jump for the different classes are more valuable than running fast for a short period of time on a long CD. But still, it's a really cool little thing. Now, this is another interesting one. Crusader Auras reduces all allies' fear duration by 30%. So, I mean, Crusader Aura has absolutely no value in combat, right? But now it does. If you use that, that could be good for maybe some PvE. Could also be really, really good for PvP. So it's the first time we've said that in a long time. And then this one's like, okay, now here's the spec-defining one. After it ends, Blessing of Freedom increase the target movement speed by 15% for 15 seconds. So again, another nice little speed boost if you're using it on yourself, which is actually something that you'll probably do a lot if you have this. After Blessing of Protection or Blessing of Sacrifice ends, the target takes, I guess it's going to be 15%. I think it's, yeah, that's CFFFF. That's supposed to be white, I believe. It's supposed to make the text white, I guess, in some kind of bug. But anyway, 15% less damage for 15 seconds. That is a very big external, okay? A 15% damage reduction on 2 different spells. I mean, that's a pretty big deal. This is insane, okay? I'm going to say that right now. What is the CD on Blessing of Sacrifice? Blessing of Protection is 5 minutes. I think Sacrifice is a minute and a half or something. Oh, it's a 2-minute CD. So, okay, so yeah, you can give this out a fair amount. And you got to remember, you got to recall, there's a little bit of synergy here, guys. Blessing of Freedom, Sacrifice, and Protection cooldowns are reduced by 1 second per holy power spent. And we're talking about possibly spamming out the holy power. And guess a lot of time you might be throwing them heals on other players. You might not be doing it to yourself only. You might not be doing Shield of Righteous. You might be using Word of Glory on others. You might be a really potent off tank in this boat here, okay? You take that, you take a little bit of this, depending on what it ends up looking like. You might be giving out big damage reductions, big heals. I mean, think about Sac. It just depends on how often you can, like, how low you can get these CDs. But I mean, it's 1 second per holy power spent. So every time you use Word of Glory, that's 3 seconds off these things that are already under. I mean, this is already 2-minute CD. Freedom's a 25-second CD. So obviously the Freedom one might not be as big, but I mean, this could be really, 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 really good for a situation where you as a tank have limited value. You're kind of just there to do a very limited role. We've seen this a lot in Nihilota especially. You're almost wishing you could one tank it, but you really do need the second tank for a random roll, or maybe even a third tank every once in a while, like a lot of people 3-tanked a lot of the early fights. This could be the play, man. I'm telling you, this kind of stuff gets my head spinning. I cannot wait to see more of it. So Prop Pally, I think, especially, is looking really good. I'm really looking forward to testing them. That should be coming up in the coming weeks. Their base kit, I think, is good. It's solid for 5-mans, but I cannot wait to see what their utility and kind of their group-wide preservation kit looks like. Looks like legendaries. And considering there's not even most conduits in the game, there's only 7 total, meaning there's at least going to be 2 more of these preservation ones. This one is already ridiculous. Can't wait to try this one. And then, of course, there's no potency conduit, so you never know. Now, Demon Hunter is another one that's recently renovated in the talent department, which I am actually really excited for. We talked a lot about that, made a whole video on that. If you haven't seen it, make sure you check it out. That was quite a few weeks ago now, but I think they have some pretty interesting potential with legendaries and what could possibly be cool conduits too in the future. So let's take a look. So, Sigil of the Illidari. I think we already covered these, but might as well go through them one more time. Casting Fell Devastation summons an allied Havoc Demon Hunter. Wait, are we in Havoc right now? That's weird. I guess it just does whatever the opposite is. That's interesting. So it's kind of cool. I don't know how good that would be. That seems kind of weird, but maybe it'd be interesting. Metamorphosis, increase your size. Gigabear is going to love that. Movement speed and melee range by 100%. So that's pretty bad, I feel like. I mean, 100% movement speed during meta is interesting. And the melee range by 100%. I don't actually know what that means. It means that you could melee range outside your normal melee range, I guess. I don't know what the actual melee range is, but that's interesting. Now, if we could use 2 legendaries, I could see why the first one would be good with this one. Fell Devastation has a 20% chance not to incur its cooldown. I'll tell you what, you ever get a second Fell Devastation back-to-back on a pack that is killing you? Well, that sounds great, doesn't it? So that's pretty cool. That changes to I-Beam, by the way, if you're playing Havoc. Anyway, automatically trigger Darkness when you fall below 35%. It can only happen once every 2 minutes. Now, if that could be really like you could get some value out of that. Of course, darkness is still only for havoc, so being able to use that as vengeance, potentially like gimmicking it in a way that you are intentionally trying to fall below 35% health just to trigger it. I mean, that sounds like that could be pretty ridiculous. I don't know how valuable darkness is going to be in the future, but I do know that if we had extra darknesses in raid, I would take it. Anyway, spirit of the darkness, spirit of the darkness flame. What is that? Yu Hakusho thing. Anyway, yeah. So your fiery brand now heals you for up to 100% of the damage done, and each enemy hit by your sigil of flame increases the instant damage of your next fiery brand by 15 seconds, stacking up to 15 times. So a lot of words there. All we know, as we talked about in the past, synergizes really well with those talent changes we talked about a while back. So really cool concept there. I don't know. We'll have to try it out. I'm interested in seeing how that actually plays. But 100% of damage done. And yeah, I mean, that could be really interesting. So anyway, Soul Cleave reduces the remaining cooldown on a random sigil by 8 seconds. Get it? These are very interesting. You take 15% reduced magic damage while Immolation Aura is active, which we know to have relatively high uptime now thanks to some talents. And each soul fragment consumed by Soul Cleave reduces the cooldown of Fiery Brand by 2 seconds. So, okay, if only you could combine some of these, man, would they be really, really strong. Unfortunately, as I said last time we covered this, don't really feel like there's a slam dunk here. But we'll see. We're going to try them out. That's the spec I really am interested in seeing. But there's one more to talk about here. This is for Havoc. And Havoc has nothing else that you can use. Chaos Strike doesn't work. Blade Dance, no go. Fell Rush, obviously, I don't think it would count for whatever the leap is called, Infernal Strike. But this one is on the list, and it makes me wonder if it's going to work for Vengeance too. Immolation Aura damage has a chance to grant you a stack of Fell Bombardment, increasing the damage of your next throw glaive by 20% and launching an additional glaive at a nearby target. This effect stacks up to 5 times. What the hell are you talking about? I mean, that's pretty ridiculous. If that actually works for Vengeance too, I mean, that might be one of the strongest. I mean, I don't know, because Throw Glaive does not do a lot. But if you throw 5 glaives and they all do 100% more damage, okay, hey, I'm interested in trying that one. So we're definitely going to be trying that one out when it is Vengeance's turn. But yeah, I don't know. As we said a while back, there's not anything that's super standing out. I just really wanted to talk about that, the fact that that was on there for Vengeance. Otherwise, this one seems really cool. I like the concepts for some of these, but yeah, we'll see how it plays out. I'm looking forward to trying them. But unfortunately, similar situation to Paladin with these conduits is too. Let's go ahead and take a look at them. The cooldown of Fiery Brand is reduced by 5 seconds. So again, they're really stacking a lot on Fiery Brand. I think it has enormous potential, this expansion. Vengeance and the way Fiery Brand might be working around, and the changes that we talked about a couple weeks ago. This one, Demonic Wards, also 8%, which is just absolutely excellent. I mean, I don't know. It's just not finished, obviously. They just put these in this build, so yeah, not much to go on here. But what could it do? Let's talk. What do you think? Demonic Wards also, what could that be? Could also reduce the physical damage you take. That would be pretty powerful, 8%. I mean, that would be pretty nuts. Maybe your move. No, I don't think it'd be movement because it's an endurance conduit. I think maybe health. Could be health increased by 8%. Who knows? What do you guys think? One way or the other, 8% kind of stands out because it really, if it's physical damage, then that's one of the best endurance conduits in the game. Anyway, the healing of shattered souls is increased by 10%. Now, I had to look this up. I think this is not for Vengeance. I don't know. Jix talks about this fairly often, and I think maybe this is what he's talking about. But basically, he said whenever you kill a demon, you do more damage. I thought that was for Havoc only. Well, I didn't know anything about it until I looked it up. But on Wowhead, it says it's for Havoc only. If that's the case, well, so there's a couple of things in here that we're going to look at that are definitely not for Vengeance right now. But if that did work for Havoc, first of all, there's no demons in the expansion. I don't know. You guys tell me. I'm not sure. Anyway, let's go on to Finesse. Your movement speed is increased by 15% after casting Infernal Strike. So realistically, it's interesting. It's like we talked about with the Paladin and even the DK stuff. Like, you know, more movement is nice for some tanks. Vengeance doesn't really need it, especially after Infernal Strike. I mean, that's cool. Maybe it could be good, but you know, it's an interesting one. Enemies that leave you in prison are snared by 50% for 5 seconds. Now, Vengeance does have a bit of a problem with slowing mobs. 50% slow is relatively good. The fact that the 5-second thing is in the white, I guess, means that might eventually be the modified number. I don't know what that would go up to, but regardless, 50% slow after in prison might be decent for kiting. They have some options already that they don't necessarily need it. So I'm not a big fan of these ones that like you CC the mob and then because some idiot broke it, now you get some consolation. That's what it feels like to me. So that's cool. Now let's see this one. Your movement speed is increased by 5% after casting Infernal Strike. Huh. Now that's interesting. That one's kind of just worse than this one, huh? Obviously probably unfinished. It's literally just the exact same, but they're different named and does way less. So I don't know what's going on there. But anyway, increase the duration of spectral sight by 3 seconds. Now that's absolutely fucking useless. But yeah, hey, you know what? Maybe someday it will be useful. Unfortunately, a lot of these don't seem to be finished, or maybe they're still working on them. But it does kind of bring the question up. Demon Hunter, unfortunately, not got a lot of history behind it, not got a lot going on for it. It's only got 2 specs. What can they do to make it cool? These conduits, you know, something like Druid has the potential to have like so many cool interactions. Paladin, even DK, but Demon Hunter's like, well, maybe you could jump a 3rd time. I don't know what they can do. Maybe make the wings make your movement speed go or faster or something. I don't know. Anyway, the rest of these, yeah, unfortunately, Blade Dance, 5% chance to apply Essence Break. Really, really bad for Vengeance. Immolation's aura is increased by an additional 10% time. It deals damage. Whoa, how about this one? This one's actually for Vengeance. Really good. Looking forward to trying that one out. Because I'm telling you, man, I'm really liking the synergy here with Immolation Aura, like we talked about in that video. Demon's Bite increases damage of other abilities. Now, other abilities, that's really cool, because I wonder if you could go Havoc, use Demon Bite, then switch to Vengeance, and would your other abilities do 3%? That seems unlikely. And then spending 8 Fury buffs the damage of I-Beam by 8%. Now, don't forget, they changed, what was it, Pain or something like that? I think it's called Fury for all specs. So this might actually work if they just changed I-Beam to Fell Devastation, like we saw with the Legendary. I brought that up on purpose because it is important. This is Fell Devastation, and then when they switch it to Havoc, it goes to I-Beam. So it's almost like they're the same spell nowadays. So I actually wonder, we have to test it, but I actually wonder if that does do something for Fell Devastation, because if so, then this might actually be really good, because spending 8 Fury, I mean, you've seen Vengeance play before. They go through a lot of Fury. They could go, like, Fury is no object for this spec at times, so maybe that'll be different in Shadowlands. But obviously a lot of these are either not done, or somebody's confused or drunk or something like that, so we'll come back to this. But I did want to bring it up because there's some, you know, some kind of existential problems with Vengeance. Has things that really they kind of can't solve, just because they've kind of boxed themselves in with the way the class is designed, and kind of their extreme outlier of mobility at times. You have to have a little check and balance here, and I think a lot of people are not looking at the check. They're looking at the balance part more than the check part. Let's put it that way. They're not too happy with some decisions that have made by Vengeance. I've always liked Vengeance. I haven't played it a ton, but I'm excited for what it might look like in Shadowlands for sure. And we saved Druid for last because unfortunately not a lot going on here. They're the last tank to get any legendaries at all, and they are still not having any conduits at all. Just show that to confirm it, but yeah, we'll be revisiting Druid in the future, I promise you that. But yeah, this is the class that if it did go well, it can go really, 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 really well for them, because they have so many options from a 4-spec class. I mean, you never know what could happen here. So let's take a look at what is here, because it's the first time we'll be covering this on the channel. So they don't even have 8 options right now, which is a bit concerning. Means I feel like a lot of these probably aren't going in. But what we do have is all power 4 Druid. When Moonfire, Rake, Rip, or Rejuvenation are on a single target, their effects are increased by 30%. So, I mean, that could be good for Bear already. But the problem is Moonfire obviously can't be applied to only one target, so you're not going to really get any value of that unless you're not taking, which I guess a lot of people probably aren't taking that talent. But rejuvenation being increased by 30% on you is actually pretty damn good. That could be interesting. Your damage over time effects occur 25% more quickly, and your healing over time effects occur 10% more quickly. Well, that's just a better version of the first talent, isn't it? I mean, what the hell? 25% more damage over time from Moonfire is probably better than 30% more damage period at times. So this one is not anything yet. Effects of Thick Hide, Astral Influence, Feline Swiftness, and Ysera's Gift are increased by 100%. When you shift into your affinities form, you gain Heart of the Wild for 15 seconds, once every minute. Now this, if this is some kind of indication for what you're going to see for Druid, I would love, I cannot wait to see this. First of all, really good for Bear. Ysera's Gift, increased by 100%, is already huge. We already know it's been buffed. And of course, when you shift into your affinities form, so meaning you go to whatever tree form or whatever it would be when you go to the healing form, I guess. I don't actually know how that works, but very, very, very potent. Heart of the Wild, which, as we know, it's a talent. If you guys aren't aware, they brought it back. Heart of the Wild. Restoration, healing of your restoration spells are increased by 30% and the mana cost reduced by 50%. So you can do a lot of healing with this. And this is a 5-minute CD. But of course, with the legendary, it's it lasts like really long, 45 seconds, 5-minute CD. But I would think that this is the better version of the talent, honestly. To me, it's like, forget the talent. This is what I want. Because 15 seconds once every minute is way better than 45 seconds once every 5 minutes. That is insanely good. So if this is, like I said, if this is any indication, Bear might be in a really interesting place right now. Imagine being able to shift. There's a lot of times where you could break combat as a Bear in 5-mans, and people overlook this. I think they can do a lot of shifting as a tank. It's not like Druid, it's not like Resto Druid or something like that, but they can do it. And if you're able to massively heal yourself, that could be really interesting. I mean, of course, it's not massive. It's only 30% more healing, but it can do a lot, especially if you can get off quite a few spells in that 15-second window. Anyway, Thrash has a 20% increased damage and in 30% increased radius and can stack one additional time. Now, that is, of course, from Legion. There's a legendary, or was it a artifact ability? Either way, pretty cool one there. I like the idea here. And of course, there's this one here. Thrash has a 15% chance to trigger an additional Thrash. Now, that one was the really famous one and had a lot of synergy in Legion. I don't necessarily know what it's going to look like. It could be really, 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 really good. Both of those, either of those could be really, really, really good, depending on what we get from Conduits, potentially maybe even Soulbinds too. If somehow Thrash gets modified in a powerful way, this could be really good. This could be a really good one. Both of these. I think I would take this one, though, honestly, because the extra stack, it's just going to be better. More damage, too. This is like, I think they were good together, right, in the end. This was the legendary, and this was from the artifact tree, if I remember. But anyway, now this one's really cool. Barkskin reduces damage by an additional 15%. First of all, that's ridiculous. When it begins and ends, you gain Iron Fur and Frenzied Regeneration. What? Okay, so first of all, 15% on top of a 20% damage reduction. So presumably that's just additive. So that makes it a 35% damage. Now that might not be true. I've done this before in the past and I've been wrong. So it's a good chance that's just 15% of 20%, which I don't even want to gather. I don't even want to know. But yeah, if it's not 35%, then maybe I'm overselling it. It's probably not, but otherwise you get Iron Fur, right? Which obviously has a lot of armor attached, and a free Frenzied Regen, which, if you know, some changes to Frenzied Regen have made that, that's a lot more valuable than I think it has been in the past. So it's a short CD. It has Barkskin. It has, what's the name of this? Survival of the Fittest. It has already some very powerful synergies in the talent tree. So if I was testing Bear right now, I would be using this one for sure. It seems like this would be really freaking good. So maybe there's going to be a Soulbind or a Conduit for Barkskin. Make it more accessible. Maybe 5 seconds off Barkskin, something like that. These kind of things are what you got to get your head around. You got to start thinking about what would be strong, what would change the spec, what would change people's perception of the spec when they see this or that. Okay, so now let's check out the other specs. If you haven't seen, apparently Starfall is really good again. Not that this is about Bombkin, but interesting. Now they got all kinds of abilities. For some reason they got 9, even though 3 of them don't work. Let's see if any of those are the same. Star Surge and Starfall each have 15% chance to make the other free. Useless. Well, actually, I don't. Now hold on a second. I already forgotten to say this, but I wanted to say this. This is going to depend heavily on what counts with these affinities. Okay, we're going back. Let's go back to bear. Okay, because I want to try something. I want to show something off here. This is really a big deal. Before we do this, I want to talk about this. Okay, so if we take, do we have to actually? Yeah, we have to be in a rested area, so that's fine. Okay, so we're gonna take balance affinity. Okay, now we got Star Surge. Okay, we did not get Star Fall. Okay, but we got this. This is what you get: Star Surge, Sunfire, 2 Sunfires, apparently passive effect. Typhoon. The big thing is that you get one of these main abilities. This you get Maim, which is feral, just beast mode. But yeah, you get Typhoon. For this, you get Ursul's Vortex. That's what you get as a bear. So yeah, you could change to any of these. For feral, you get Rake, Rip, Maim on top of what you get. So it's actually up here: Star Surge, Starfire, Sunfire. We don't actually even have to switch. And then Ysera's Gift is the main one, but you also get Swift Mend, Wild Growth, and Ursul's Vortex. Now, of course, Swift Mend consumes the hot now, but still could be really good in combat if you can shift in and out real quick. So that's important, okay? That's something that I don't really know that well, like the spells, the names and everything. So it's important that I say it out loud, so you might register some info that I don't already recognize. But anyway, now we'll go back. So if do those things count? We don't know yet, probably, but you never know. We'll see how powerful that might end up being. So here you go. Star Surge and Starfall each have a free 15% chance to make the other free. Well, we don't have Starfall as a tank, no matter what, seemingly. So that's useless, but it's already possible, right? Every 400 astral power spent grants celestial alignment. So again, I don't think you have astral power as a tank that uses the affinity, but you never know. Clear cast abilities grant and generate 25% chance. Wait, 25% of their energy cost, and your maximum energy is increased by 60%. That is a feral power. Okay, that's actually not supposed to be there. So these two are open. These two are open. What could they be? Lady and the Child. Come on, let me get it. One to buy, Lady and the Child for bear. Again, I'd love it if they brought that back in. Bear immediately gets more interesting. Now I'm going to spec feral, but this is not. Don't get it twisted here. We're only doing it just to demonstrate it. This is not. Don't worry about this, guys. Anyway, again, another empty one. Apex Predator's Craving. Rip damage has a 4% chance to make your next ferocious bite free. Now, I think they have both of those, right? If you take feral affinity, I think we already said that. Rip and ferocious bite. I'm pretty sure you have both of those. Maybe that's really good for offense, off tanking or something like that when you're not in bear form. Tiger's Fury causes your next finishing move to restore 3 combo points. Don't think they have that. I doubt it. Legacy of the Sleeper. Now this is a feral. This should be in the tank one, I guess, but it's not in there right now, so I'm not really sure what's going on. But I'm pretty sure this is meant to be a bear legendary. Berserks in bear form grants 25% increased damage, 25% leech, and immunity to effects that cause loss of control to your character. So, of course, Rage of the Sleeper, very famous. A lot of people like go on and on about these, all these bear tanks who hate playing a bear tank. They always talk about getting Rage of the Sleeper back, being a mandatory step towards fixing the class. And I think this would be really, really good given what they just got here with Berserk. So, a very interesting concept. I don't know why it says this is a feral one. I just want to go back and confirm that there's an empty slot for bear. I think there was. But yeah, I'm pretty sure that's supposed to be the 4th one for bear. Yeah, you see that one's just empty. Okay, so it's a little bugged, I guess. That's probably the 4th one for bear then. So I'm glad we looked at that. And then we'll finally take a look at restoration for the final pick. But again, you see the potential here. These might be overlapping. A Wild Growth has a 25% chance to cause your next rejuve or regrowth to apply to 2 additional targets. Okay, again, you know, you might be getting this stuff here, guys. You might have access to this kind of thing. You may Life Bloom 2 targets at once, and Life Bloom's final healing is increased. I don't think you'll ever have access to that. Swiftman no longer consumes the heal over time effect and extends the duration of your other heal over time effects on the target by 10 seconds. Hey, now, I don't think this works this way, but what happens if it worked for Frenzy Regen? I don't think that's possible. I'm pretty sure if you shift out of bear form, Frenzy Regen stops, but imagine if it didn't. You pop Frenzy Regen, you shift out, Swift Mend, boom, 10 seconds extra on Frenzy Regen. I don't think that's possible, but you never know. Rejuvenation Healing has a 2% chance to create a new rejuvenation on a nearby target. So again, these are spells that you can have access to as a bear. Why am I bringing this up? Not necessarily because I think any of these individual legendaries might be good, but because I think in the future, Druid, again, might be the tank that has the most synergy with its other specs while tanking. And it's just kind of like, well, what spells don't they have, right? They have a lot of these spells. No conduits whatsoever right now. I'm actually going to go ahead and hearth just to show you this. But we'll log the character out there because that's where we're waiting for the conduits. And I'm going to tell you right now, they are going to get conduits that are going to be usable for opposite specs. Like we talked about this on the other classes. I don't know what they're going to get that they are not. Like, you know what I mean? Like, what can Resto Druid get that is, you know, a slew of things that some value won't be like allocated for bear? You know what I mean? What could possibly exist? I don't know. Will it ever be used? What do you guys think? Probably not, I think. A lot of people are probably immediately thinking, no way. You're going to take ones that directly modify your ability to tank. But I think the big power of bear is these auxiliary ones that potentially might have really high usage, especially in scenarios where you could shift in and out. So, but yeah, as you see, not a thing here. Yeah, not a thing. So unfortunately, that's it for this little incomplete picture. We didn't really see everything that we could have saw from Paladin, Demon Hunter, or Bear, but I think we did see a lot from especially Bloody Case Kit. Really complete. I feel like Warriors is good too, and Monk could use a little work, but it's not too shabby. So let me know what you think. Longer video, but I want to get all of this on paper. We've been talking a lot about legendaries, so I just want to talk about the synergy. So think about it. Tell me in the comments what you would want to see from these synergies, how you would react, how you think there might be potential, like what can save Bear? This is the question, right? Bear maybe looked at right now is not a great pick. What could happen that could put them in the position they were in Legion? Besides buffing spells, where can they gain power? From conduits, from legendaries, from interactions from conduits and legendaries with each other, or potentially with talents or other, you know, conduit spells, soulbind tree spells, all that stuff. So let me know what you think. Stuff like that I freaking love. My favorite, really, it's my favorite passion in the game is mixing and matching systems and content, power gains for the benefit of the playstyle. That is one of the things I love the most in BFA. Legion was really good too, and I hope that Shadowlands will be the icing on the cake for that topic. So let me know what you think. Thanks for watching. We're going to see you guys in the next video.